Welcome to week 7. This week we are dealing with systems architecture. And specifically, the panel this week was on architecting in a complex system environment. This week in the blog, we cover some of the tasks and roles of a system architect, the correlation between the traditional sense of an architect, so one that builds a building, and software and system architects. We look at the idea of complexity and why we have issues with that. And finally, we have a look at some of the tools that architects have at their disposal to get their job done. So instead, I thought that maybe the video could cover some of the more subjective, sort of personable points that were raised this week in the panel and then in the different resources. So to get into it, the first point that I want to raise is something that John kept reiterating during the panel. We kept bringing it up, the fact that system architects deal with people. He really drove it home that if you can't deal with people, then you are not going to make it as a system architect. So system architecture is always going to be concerned with people. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Where have I heard that before? Software engineering is always going to be concerned with people in one way or another. You're always going to be developing in teams. You're always going to have end users. You're going to have end users who make mistakes. You're going to have someone who's paying you to make this software. You're going to have politics involved. No matter what type of software you're building, no matter what system it is, no matter who your employer is, at the end of the day, you're going to be involved with people, and you're going to have to keep that in mind when you're developing software. So that there was a clip from week 1 of this course. So you can see that this theme is really being carried all the way through. It's something that keeps cropping up. This industry, whether you like it or not, deals with people. Furthering that, another point that John made was that being a system architect means that you know how to ask the right questions of the right people. If you're building the core of a system, you have to make sure that what you're making fits in with the needs of the users, is achievable and deliverable, fits in with the goals of your organization, and is satisfactory to your stakeholders. And to do that, you need to make sure you're getting the right information from whoever you need to. Another point that I thought was quite interesting was that if you're a system architect, then you need to go and find war stories, but not necessarily take them as gospel. I just thought that was a really interesting point. I thought, that's quite interesting that you have to go to people and find out what's the worst that's happened. What have you had to deal with in your time here, and then look at it and think, could that have been avoided? Why did that problem happen? And when you're designing a system, try and avoid those problems, but not necessarily take them as the absolute worst, because you have to take a step back and try and separate that bias from the stories. I thought that was something that's really interesting. And finally today I wanted to talk about what it takes to be a systems architect. So we've established that you need to be able to deal with people. The other point that was brought up in the panel though was that if you have a really black and white view of the world and you like things to fit in a box, then yeah, being a software engineer, that could be right up your alley. That could be something you'd be really good at, especially if you're good at thinking in numbers and code, which was a funny point to make considering I'm pretty sure that everyone in that room is studying software engineering in one way or the other anyway. But the point that John made was that if you're happy taking on a nebula perspective of the world and taking other people's points of view into account and trying to build something out of all those perspectives, then being a systems architect might be something that interests you, especially if we come from a technical background. It does mean breaking that thought process that we're so trained at university, but with that technical background, you really could potentially make a good systems architect, which was interesting. I personally quite like customer service and I like dealing with clients. I thought project management was probably the route that I was looking at further down the track of my career, but who knows, maybe systems architecture is there. I don't know. Guess one of those things that time will tell. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the rest of the blog. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next week. See ya.